The Guinness Book of World Records just established a new category for the world's oldest man baby. Check out the announcement right here, and I'll be right back.
Because you have no credibility.
But you've never presented evidence that it was rigged. Let's keep talking about, I want to talk about Todd.
Evidence, there's more evidence than ever presented.
Let's talk
Your
about
elections in this country, we're like a third world country. Your elections are crooked, and you're crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked, and so is ABC, and CBS, and CNN.
But Mr. President,
You're one-sided crooked network. So let's call it quits, because I've had enough. Thank you, darling. Have a good time.
Mr. President, let's please, I travel all the way to Wisconsin.
I travel all the
I know. I
I've slept in
travel
the rain
all the
with
way
you
to
for an hour.
Wisconsin.
Wandered off in the rain, and I've given you enough time. You ought to straighten out your press, because you know what?
Mr.
A
President,
country can never be
we
great
travel
with a
all-
dishonest.
What you saw right there was the President of the United States having a complete meltdown and throwing a temper tantrum because he was held accountable by a reporter for backing up one of many insane claims that he made. And in typical Trump fashion, when pressed to provide evidence for all the kooky things that he says, he pitches a fit and storms out. And that is typical of not only Trump, but it's typical of every single one of his supporters. These people are not attached to reality, just like their leader. And whenever confronted with reality and held accountable for providing evidence, they turn tail and run. Here's what's interesting. Now, while I made a joke at the beginning about this being the world's biggest and oldest man baby, the reality of it is that this has been Trump's behavior for as long as he's been in the public eye. You saw it when he was on The Apprentice, when it came to some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that the production team at The Apprentice had to deal with when it came to the care, feeding, and upkeep of the diapered orange dementia patient in chief.
He's worn diapers since probably the 90s, but I saw it firsthand in the 2000s on Celebrity Apprentice in late 2000s, and we'd have to stop the show and change him, and that was Keith Schiller's job. He would take him off set, he would wipe him down. Our nickname for Keith was Wet Wipes. It's not a joke. It's happened several times.
Now, we ignored all of that, and we ignored all of the terrible behavior. And now we're acting like this particular meltdown was some sort of surprise. What I find particularly interesting about all of this is the level of praise that Kristen Welker is getting. And I happen to be of the camp that she is doing her job. What Kristen Welker did in that interview should have been the default. Should have been the default that every reporter took from the 2010s onward as Trump began to raise his profile and ultimately run for the office of the presidency. But that's not what happened. People excused his BS and excused his lies and took his excuses at face value instead of holding him accountable. And that media cowardice is why we are here today. We are here because everyone in the press gave him a pass. Everyone excused all of the evidence that was surrounding him of being not only unqualified, but also of him being a complete sexual predator. His own words gave him away.
That's what she said I did to her. She fainted with great emotion. She actually indicated that she loved it. I mean, she loved it until commercial break. In fact, I think she said it was sexy, didn't she? It was very sexy to be raped. Didn't you say that?
So, sir, I just want to confirm, it's your testimony that Eugene Carroll said that she loved being sexually assaulted by you?
Well, based on her interview with Anderson Cooper.
So we have a decade or more of evidence of him being a fraud, of evidence of him being a racist, of evidence of him being a crook, of evidence of him being a predator, and of evidence of him associating with predators. All of that was ignored by a cowardly press. And now, because one reporter in a brief moment decided to do her job, we're throwing flowers at her as if she did something spectacular. This is the perfect illustration of how doing the bare minimum gets held up as if it's some sort of major achievement. What Kristen Welker did should be the rule, not the exception. And the fact of the matter is that there are many things in the U.S. that need an overhaul. How the press holds people in power accountable should be one of the first things that gets examined, because the lack of courage from the press, thanks in large part due to the fact that every major media entity is owned by a billionaire oligarch, is a major reason and a contributing factor to why people like Trump gain power. The entire Republican Party is full of people like him, unserious people who are unqualified, and rather than answer with substantive policy decisions, they point the finger and deflect blame and shift the topic into things that don't matter. That is the Republican playbook. And until and unless we have a media that is willing to hold these people accountable, we're going to have more of the same. And if you want to understand what good journalism looks like, you need to watch this.
Mr. Bottoms, you have claimed without offering evidence that there are 45,000 to 50,000 Tren de Aragua gang members in Colorado, mostly in rural areas, which is odd because that's 10 to 20 times the worldwide membership of the gang, according to the U.S. government. You also say that sheriffs in Colorado are preparing to deputize people who have special forces experience to go and fight this foreign army. I reached out to every single sheriff in Colorado, not one said you're telling the truth. A couple of them laughed you right out of the room. Do you stand by your claim, and will you finally present your evidence tonight?
Yeah, this is the first half of your question, the 45,000. So I actually went back because I was told that by 2 ICE agents. So I went back and I talked to federal authorities, actually this week, federal officers, and they said I got that wrong. That what they said was actually happening is 45,000 Venezuelans came directly to Denver and then applied for asylum. And they said there's probably 60 or 70,000 Venezuelans, not cartel, but just Venezuelans. And I said, okay, so I'm going to have to go on Kyle Clark's show and say that differently. And they said, but we do know there's a few thousand cartel in the state of Colorado. I got that one wrong. I misunderstood what the ICE agent was saying, so I checked it on this week. Now, going to all the 65 sheriffs in all the counties, I've talked to a couple that said you never called them. You want me to give you some names?
We emailed every single sheriff's office multiple times. We heard back from 40 of the more than 60 sheriffs, and the sheriffs that we heard back from did not support your claims. The one sheriff that you name-checked in your lengthy response to us, Teller County Sheriff Jason Meisel, who was a previous candidate for governor, said you're confused about things you see on the news, which I believe you just confirmed when you said you couldn't tell the difference between the 45,000 Venezuelans who came to Colorado and 45,000 Tren de Aragua gang members, which do not exist in the whole wide world.
What you saw is a great example of what media accountability and press accountability looks like. Everyone should be taking a page out of that debate moderator's playbook and applying it to every state, local, and federal election possible. We need to move past the time where candidates are given a pass, and we need to make sure that reporters and media are held to a very high standard. And as a voting population, we also need to hold ourselves to a standard where we are no longer giving free passes to rapists and pedophiles and felons and allowing them to assume the highest office in the land to enrich themselves. That should be the bare minimum expectation. But unfortunately, we are living through a real-life idiocracy, and I fear that the Trump experience is a preview into what the future of politics looks like for all U.S. citizens.